Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Road Trip JavaScript 2. If you completed the first course, you now have an elementary education in the basic elements of the JavaScript language. In this course, we'll be exploring more of those fundamental concepts that will build the skills you need for your future in web development. So all aboard, come back and join us on the second course of the JavaScript Road Trip.
From the labyrinth of loops to the variable valley, we'll see the cliffs of value first. JavaScript's right up your alley. Built-ins, bluff, files, files, array, archipelago. Declarations in a desert where you'll find out how far you'll go. Learn to program, take a ride, buy a ticket, step inside. All aboard, you're at the station to increase your education. Bon voyage, skinny dip! As long as functions you don't skip on this, the JavaScript Road Trip.
Hey road trippers, here comes level 1, the labyrinth of loops. Don't get lost. Don't get lost. Don't get lost. Don't get lost. So in our last level, we had some pretty repetitive code that kind of sucked a lot, and we want to try to improve that situation. A loop is going to allow us to do that. The first loop that we'll look at today is a while loop. And the while loop will run its code just so long as its Boolean condition evaluates to true. Here we have a basic while loop setup that includes the while loop keyword and then a set of parentheses. Inside this parentheses is going to be an expression, and if that expression evaluates to true, the content of the loop, the code inside the loop, will execute. Then it will go back to the top of the loop and check the expression again. If the expression is still true, the code inside the loop will be executed again. And this will continue until the condition inside the parentheses is false. Now what does this mean? It means that if we had a while loop where we explicitly wrote true as the condition, that means that while loop would go on forever and ever ad infinitum and would never stop. It's called the infinite loop. Additionally, if we had false hard-coded into the while loop, that while loop would never run at all. So we're good with the true and the false conditionals inside a while loop. So now let's make a loop that prints the numbers 1 through 5 in ascending order. We need to think about this a little bit to make sure that we get the exact right output. The first thing that we'll need to do is establish a variable, let's call it number, and we will set that number equal to 1 since that's our starting point. Now we'll build the while loop. So here you can see inside the while loop that as long as our number is less than or equal to 5, we will print the number with the console.log, and then we will increase our number's value. It's important that we increment the number inside the loop because it's going to advance our number through the numbers that we want to print, but it's also going to eventually become greater than 5 and therefore stop the loop. Now if we were to run this code, the loop would execute 5 times, and within each loop, a number would get printed and then incremented. So now the important thing to understand about loops is that they will allow us to execute code repeatedly without typing forever, which is really terrible. So what we want to do is try to apply this to our trains situation where we wanted to print a message about which trains we're running. Here we want to execute the following code for every one of the running trains. Now that bracketed word number is just a placeholder for the number value of the train that we want to print. Now we know our variables can be changed. So let's make one that will count our trains in the loop that we're going to produce for this code. We're going to set it to 1 because obviously the first train that we print will be 1. Then we need a way to make our train counter increase on every repetition. Obviously that will go with our incrementation code, train number plus plus. When we put those code items together, we can see that the following code will need to loop back until all running trains have been listed. And we could also say that this code needs to run as long as the train number is less than or equal to 8, because there are 8 running trains today. Let's trace through the loop we actually need. First, we'll initialize our train number value to 1. This will both help control the loop and be used in our printouts. From there, the loop will only continue if the train number is less than or equal to 8. Then our loop will actually execute its contents, and what are those? Well, they're printing out our running train message using the train number variable inside a console.log method. Once that code is finished, we'll perform the very important step of incrementing our train number, which steps forward to the next train and will eventually stop our loop. After incrementing our variable with train number ++, we'll cycle back up to check the less than or equal condition again. This looping procedure will continue until the train number is greater than 8 and the loop should stop. Now the while loop for this is going to look something like this. In there you can see our initialization of the train number 1. You can see our condition to check, which is the train number less than or equal to 8. You can see our printout of the train message, and you can see our incrementation of the train number. Let's take a closer look at the values that happen when we run the loop. The very first thing that train number gets set to is the value 1. Is the train number less than or equal to 8? Yes, it is, so that condition will be true, and so the loop output will be train number 1 is running. After that gets printed, train number gets incremented to 2. And the same procedure occurs all the way through the loop, printing out new train numbers until the train number is 9. As soon as that happens, train number is no longer less than or equal to 8, and so that condition is false, and the loop will stop. Let's migrate our while loop over to the trains.js file. Now in our trains.js file, we want to use variables instead of hard-coded values to control our train loop. Why would we want to do that? Because not every day will there be 8 operational trains. Some days we'll have operational trains of 10. So we want to be able to make our loop respond to the contents of a variable and not to a hard-coded value. So here we can see that we have our train's operational variable set to 8 today. And our train number variable, of course, will start at 1. Here's our while loop. And notice that inside our conditional, now we check to see if the train number is less than or equal to the train's operational variable. That will ensure that on any given day, as long as the train's operational variable is set to the correct amount of running trains, we'll get the exactly correct loop of printout.